Welcome to this month's edition of VideoTec. Battery service may seem like a pretty basic area for a VideoTec program, but there's a good reason for covering this topic. The fact is that a majority of the battery replacement that takes place under warranty occurs before vehicles are sold. A few simple precautions can prevent most of these batteries from discharging. And most of the batteries that are presently being replaced could still see service if they were charged properly. In this program, in addition to discussing how to prevent batteries from discharging and how to charge batteries correctly, we're going to cover load testing and testing for the cause of battery discharge, including excessive ignition off draw. To start, though, let's review some basics of battery operation. To provide power for starting an engine and operating a vehicle's electrical devices, a battery relies on the electrochemical reaction between a series of positive and negative plates. Positive plates contain lead dioxide and negative plates contain sponge lead. In between the plates is a mixture of water and sulfuric acid called the electrolyte, which will allow a chemical reaction to take place and a difference in voltage to occur. As batteries discharge, the sulfuric acid in the electrolyte reacts with the lead and lead dioxide on the plates to form lead sulfate and water. In addition to the loss of active material, the coating of lead sulfate on the plates and the water in the electrolyte impede chemical reaction. As the battery is charged, the process is reversed. The lead sulfate on the plates reacts with water to form sulfuric acid in the electrolyte and lead dioxide and sponge lead on the plates. Of the everyday factors affecting a battery's ability to do its job, one of the most important is temperature. A battery operates best at around room temperature. As ambient temperatures decrease below this, a battery's ability to provide power decreases while the amount of current required for cranking increases. At 0 degrees Fahrenheit, a battery provides about 60% of the power it provided at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. On the other hand, the power required for cranking has increased about 250% because of the increased viscosity of engine oil and increased friction. To indicate the ability to provide power at low temperatures, batteries are given a cold cranking amps rating. The cold cranking amps rating is the amount of current the battery can deliver at 0 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 seconds while still maintaining at least 7.2 volts at the battery terminals. Besides being on the battery case, the cold cranking amps rating is also listed in the service manual. Temperature also has an effect on a battery's ability to accept a charge. As temperatures decrease, the battery is slower to accept the charge. At this point, you might be thinking that high temperature must be beneficial for a battery. In fact, high temperature can also have a negative effect. As temperature rises, chemical reactions are speeded up, and the battery that is in storage will self-discharge more rapidly. The corrosive effects of battery chemicals also increase, reducing battery life. Given what a battery is expected to do and some of the conditions it must work under, a battery's job is not an easy one. Next, we'll look at some conditions that make a battery's job even harder. For new vehicles being stored on the lot, the major cause of battery discharge is ignition off draw, or IOD. IOD is caused by components which use current when the ignition key is in the off position. The number of these components has increased over the years, and the list of potential sources of IOD is a long one. We're talking about components such as the engine controller, radio, clock, trip computer, transaxle controller, keyless entry system, anti-theft system, body computer, load leveling system, and memory power seat. When a vehicle that's equipped with these components is in storage, the battery can discharge from an 80% state of charge to a 50% state of charge in as little as 21 days. Below a 50% state of charge, the battery may not start the vehicle in colder weather and is at risk of being damaged. The solution to this problem is simple. Disconnect the components from the battery. On some vehicles, this means disconnecting the IOD connector if the vehicle is in storage a relatively short period of time. Don't forget to reconnect the IOD before demonstrating or delivering a vehicle. This is particularly important on Premier and on vehicles having a body controller. On these vehicles, the IOD affects federally mandated items. For extended periods of storage, 75 days or more, disconnect the large main battery connector. On vehicles without these connectors, disconnecting the negative battery cable will do the job. You might want to take time to tell others who need to start and move vehicles where the connectors are located. If they're reluctant to follow this practice, you might point out that Chrysler isn't the only car company combating unnecessary battery replacement, and that the company that's most successful will be that much more competitive in the market. You might also remind them that potential customers will take a much better view of connectors being reconnected than they will of a vehicle that has to be jump-started or have its battery replaced before it can be test-driven. And storage of batteries at a state of charge higher than 50% can increase battery life and customer satisfaction. By the way, if you do need to replace a battery or jump-start a vehicle, observe the necessary safety precautions and make the jump-start connections properly, as illustrated in the owner's manual. If you must move a battery, wear gloves, and under most circumstances, you should not tip a battery. Electrolyte may leak out. We'll discuss an exception to this practice when we cover taking hydrometer readings. Batteries contain corrosive chemicals, so be sure to wear safety glasses during battery service or jump starting. Never jump, test, or charge a battery with a low fluid level. Batteries contain explosive gases, and a battery with low fluid level may arc internally and explode during jump starting, load testing, or charging. Also, keep sparks and flame away from batteries. These may also cause a battery to explode. If electrolyte does contact your skin or eyes, immediately flush the affected area with water and, if necessary, seek medical help. When jump-starting a vehicle, make your first connection to the positive terminal of the booster battery. Then connect the other end of this cable to the positive terminal of the discharge battery. Connect one end of the second cable to the negative terminal of the boost battery. Connect the other end of the second cable to a good engine ground on the vehicle to be jump-started. The ground must be located away from the battery and from engine components which may begin operating, such as the cooling fan. Locating the final connection away from the battery helps prevent sparks from igniting any gas that the discharged battery may vent. If the vehicle is equipped with a security alarm, cycle the key in the door lock cylinder. You must unlock the door to disable the alarm. The fact that jump starting is required is not necessarily an indication that a battery is discharged. The problem could have been corrosion or a loose connection that the jumper cables temporarily corrected. So, how can you tell if a battery is discharged? On a maintenance-free battery, to get a rough indication of a battery's charge, look at the state of charge indicator in the top of the battery. The green color indicates that the battery is 75% to 100% charged and can be used in the vehicle or load tested. A black or dark color indicates the battery is discharged to less than 75% charge and must be charged before it can be returned to service or load tested. A yellow color means the electrolyte is below the test indicator, possibly due to overcharging, and the battery must be replaced. You're not likely to see this indication in batteries on new vehicles. Some of the indicators used by batteries on import vehicles to signify state of charge are different. Some import batteries use blue instead of green to signify the battery is charged sufficiently for use or load testing. And white indicates that a battery needs to be recharged before use or load testing. A more accurate indication of a maintenance-free battery's state of charge is open circuit voltage. For an open circuit voltage reading that reflects the true state of charge, you must first remove the surface charge from a battery that's been charging or in use. To do this, place a 300 amp load on the battery for 15 seconds. Allow the battery to stabilize for 2 minutes. Then check the battery voltage. The open circuit voltage reading will give you a good indication of the state of charge. As we'll see later, open circuit voltage can also be used in estimating charging time required. Some vehicles use batteries with removable fill caps. On these batteries, you can use a hydrometer to measure the electrolyte's specific gravity. This reading indicates the battery's state of charge. On batteries in new vehicles, the electrolyte will probably be close to the proper level. On batteries in service, if the electrolyte level is low, you'll need to add water. It's best to use distilled water to bring cells up to their proper level. At the very least, you should avoid using water high in mineral content. And keep in mind that you won't be able to take hydrometer readings on a battery that just had water added to it. To make sure the electrolyte is thoroughly mixed before taking hydrometer readings, with the fill caps on, rock the battery back and forth to about a 45-degree angle, about 15 to 20 times. Keep the following items in mind when taking the readings. Be careful not to damage the battery plates when inserting the tip of the hydrometer into the battery case. Withdraw enough electrolyte to float the bulb in the hydrometer. Keep the hydrometer straight when taking readings and disregard the curvature of the electrolyte on the float. To correct for the effects of temperature, subtract 4 points of specific gravity for each 10 degrees below 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and add 4 points for each 10 degrees above 80 degrees Fahrenheit. For example, suppose a hydrometer reading is 1250 and the temperature of the battery is about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. To correct the reading, subtract 4 points for each 10 degrees below 80 degrees Fahrenheit. In this case, that means subtracting 3 times 4, or 12. The result is 1238. On a battery in a new vehicle, you probably won't see much variation in specific gravity between cells, but you might on batteries that have been in service for a while. If the variation between the lowest and highest cell exceeds 50 points, the battery should be replaced. Remember, you can take hydrometer readings only on batteries that have removable fill caps. Never attempt to remove the vent caps from a maintenance-free battery or a battery that has do not pry on its top. Doing so will damage the vent system. A battery's open circuit voltage or hydrometer readings should give you a pretty good idea of its state of charge and what your next step should be in battery service. Earlier, we discussed such safety practices as wearing safety glasses during battery service, never testing or charging a battery with low electrolyte level, and keeping sparks and flame away from batteries. Before we cover charging and testing, we need to add a few more precautions to these. Inspect batteries before charging or testing. Replace batteries that have loose posts or that have a cracked case. These batteries should not be charged or load tested. Charging a battery simply reverses the chemical processes that occurred during discharge. Several factors affect how quickly a battery can be brought up to a full charge. One factor is size. At a given charge current and with an equal initial state of charge, a larger battery will take longer to charge than a smaller battery. In the larger battery, there's more material involved in the chemical reaction. Another factor is charger capacity or rate. In general, a battery will charge twice as fast at a 10 amp rate as at a 5 amp rate. As we'll see later on, voltage can also affect charge rates. As mentioned earlier, temperature has an effect on a battery's ability to accept a charge. A battery will not accept a charge as readily if it is cold. Finally, a battery's state of charge and the amount of time it's been discharged affect the charge rate. It takes about twice as long to charge a battery that is at 12 volts as it does to charge one at 12.3 volts. And as we'll see later, some completely discharged batteries may require several hours before they'll even begin to accept a noticeable charge. On all batteries, there are a few precautions you need to keep in mind during charging. Always disconnect the battery from a vehicle's electrical system before connecting the charger. This ensures that the electronic components on the vehicle are protected. Always charge a cold battery at a low rate, 5 amps or less, until it warms up and begins to accept a charge more readily. Never allow a battery's temperature to exceed 125 degrees Fahrenheit during charging. At 125 degrees Fahrenheit, the battery will be warm to the touch. Exceeding this temperature may damage the battery. Many chargers reduce current to the battery as the state of charge increases. By observing the drop in charging rate, you can get a pretty good idea of when the battery is charged. But if you're using a charger that delivers a constant rate, to estimate charging time, you can use a table in the service manual listing the battery's present state of charge. For example, if a battery is at about the 50% state of charge and the charger rate is 20 amps, it should take about 2 hours to charge the battery. The procedure for estimating charging time for batteries on imports is somewhat different. Be sure to refer to the appropriate service manual when charging these batteries. On batteries with removable fill caps, you can get a pretty good idea of when to stop charging by taking hydrometer readings after the battery has been taken off the charger. The specific gravity of all cells should be 1235 to 1300. And the hydrometer readings for the highest and lowest cells should be no more than 50 points apart. If the highest and lowest cell readings are more than 50 points apart, the battery is defective and should be replaced. Be careful not to overcharge batteries. Once the test indicator appears green or the hydrometer readings are high enough, you should turn off a constant current type of charger. You may need to jostle a battery slightly to allow the indicator in a maintenance-free battery to change color. A completely discharged battery may require some special charging procedures. Because of the amount of water in the electrolyte and the coating of lead sulfate on the plates, many completely discharged batteries at first will accept very little charge. Because some completely discharged batteries are slow to charge, many serviceable batteries are being replaced unnecessarily. This, along with IOD, is the major cause of battery replacement on new vehicles. When charging a completely discharged battery, use a charger capable of delivering 16 to 18 volts. The higher voltage helps overcome the battery's resistance to charging. Even at 16 volts or more, however, it may take up to 4 hours before some batteries accept a measurable charge. An exception is the Group 34 batteries beginning with the 1990 model year. When charged at 16 volts, these batteries are designed to accept a minimum of 5 amps after 5 minutes on the charger. In addition to using sufficient voltage and allowing some batteries to wake up, You may also need to bypass the polarity protection on some chargers. The battery must have a certain amount of voltage to shut off the polarity protection circuit. Completely discharged batteries may not have sufficient voltage. For the steps to bypass polarity protection on your charger, refer to the instructions provided with it. Once a battery is charged, load testing will confirm that it's ready for service. Load testing involves subjecting a battery to a load for 15 seconds and then noting its voltage. To load test a battery, apply a load equal to 1/2 the cold cranking amps rating for 15 seconds. At the end of 15 seconds, note the battery voltage and remove the load. Battery temperature has an effect on the voltage readings, so be sure to estimate the battery temperature before comparing the resulting voltage to the figures in the load test chart. You'll find the chart in the service manuals as well as in the VideoTec reference book. Batteries that do not meet specifications should be replaced. Although we've been concentrating on batteries in new vehicles, the battery charging and testing procedures we've discussed also apply to batteries in service. Also applicable is the idea that just because a battery is discharged does not necessarily mean it's defective. One of the first things you need to do when a battery discharges or performs poorly is to check the battery and charging system for poor connections. An alternative to removing the connections is to check for voltage drop across the battery connections when the circuit is under load. For example, to check for voltage drop across the positive battery connection, the voltmeter positive lead is connected to the positive battery post, and the voltmeter negative lead is connected to the positive cable terminal. A voltage reading of over 0.1 volts during cranking indicates a poor connection. You can clean deposits from batteries in terminals with a solution of baking soda and water, but be sure to seal any vent holes so that the cleaning solution does not enter the battery. The baking soda will neutralize the acid in the electrolyte. And replace the felt washer at the base of the positive battery post before reinstalling the cable. This washer helps prevent the buildup of deposits beneath the battery terminal. Besides cleaning the terminal clamps, clean the posts on replacement batteries. Otherwise, the oxidation on the posts will prevent a good connection. While we're on the subject of replacement batteries, there are a few preventive measures you can take to help ensure good results from the batteries you stock. First, store batteries in as cool an area as possible. As mentioned earlier in the program, a battery's self-discharge rate increases with temperature. In a storage area kept at around 90 degrees Fahrenheit, a battery may drop below acceptable charge in around 2 months. Second, because a battery's charge declines the longer it remains in stock, be sure to rotate stock so the oldest batteries are used first. Another possible cause of a battery's failure to maintain a full charge is the charging system. If the charging system is faulty, charging or replacing the battery won't solve the problem. Refer to the appropriate diagnostic procedures manual or service manual for charging system diagnosis. Don't overlook owner-related causes when a battery fails to maintain a full charge. When talking to a customer, find out if a vehicle has been stored for an extended period of time or driven only occasionally on short trips. Owner-installed accessories are another possible cause. The current demand from accessories may exceed the charging system specifications. Current drain may also be excessive if the accessory is installed incorrectly. When a good battery fails to hold a charge and a charging system seems to be meeting demand when the engine is running, it's time to consider excessive ignition off draw as a cause. That's the subject of the next part of this program. Years ago, tracking down the cause of ignition off draw was easy. You simply turned all accessories off, installed an ammeter or test light in series, and checked the light or meter while pulling fuses or disconnecting fusible links. The arrival of solid-state electronic components with timeout features means you need to modify this approach. As explained earlier, many components continue to draw current after the ignition is turned off. Of these components, some are always drawing a small amount of current. Others time out within a certain period of time as long as the doors aren't open or the keys aren't used. Because of this, the procedure for checking for excessive IOD requires a more sophisticated approach than in the past. The specific approach will vary from vehicle to vehicle because of differences in equipment, but the general approach is the same. Install a test light having a cold resistance of about 6 or 7 ohms securely between the negative battery post and the disconnected negative battery cable. Deactivate all switches and accessories which would extend the timeout of the electronic components. Then allow the components to time out. An alternative is to defeat the timer by disconnecting the component. Keep in mind, however, that disconnecting a component may mask a problem if the current draw is caused by the disconnected component. Check for large current drains using the test light, and for small current drains using a milliammeter with a maximum capacity of 1 or 2 amps. Be sure to maintain battery connection with the test light until the milliammeter is securely in place. If the test light becomes disconnected, even for an instant, when the milliammeter is connected, current draw may rise and the meter may be damaged. Let's see how the procedure would work on a vehicle equipped with a large number of electronic components. This vehicle has had regular complaints of a discharged battery, yet the battery is not at fault and the charging system is in good shape. To begin the check for excessive ignition off draw, first make sure that any switch devices that could result in current draw are off, and then pull the circuit breaker for the load leveling system. Otherwise, we would have to wait 65 minutes for the load leveler controller to time out. The next step is to remove the ignition key. Because of the equipment on this vehicle, we then need to wait 65 seconds for the illuminated entry system and body computer to time out. Next, open the hood and, after making sure the light is not the cause of the current draw, remove the underhood bulb. Then, without disconnecting the negative cable, secure the ends of a 12-volt test light having a resistance of about 6 or 7 ohms to the negative cable and the negative post. Next, disconnect the negative battery cable from the battery post, making sure the test light remains connected. On this vehicle, after the battery terminal is removed from the post, the test light is lit brightly, as if it were connected across the battery. On other body lines, the light may be dim. This test light must remain secured to the cable and post. If it's disconnected even for an instant, any timers will begin over again. Since this vehicle is equipped with various electronic components with timers, we need to take additional steps. We've already taken the load leveler out of the system. Now we need to disconnect the security alarm system by pulling fuse 13 in the fuse block. Since the transaxle controller has a timer, we must either wait 25 minutes or disconnect the controller. As mentioned earlier, though, if a controller is the cause of excessive current draw, disconnecting it will mask the problem. With the electronic components timed out or disconnected, you're ready to begin tracking down the cause. Since in this case the test light has dimmed down, the off draw seems to be in the lower range, and we can now track down the cause using the milliammeter. Normal IOD should be no more than 30 milliamperes. After disconnecting fuses in the power distribution center one by one, we discover the draw is through the 40-amp cartridge-type fuse link for the heated rear window and other accessories. After replacing the cartridge, we further isolate the cause by referring to the wiring diagram and checking the circuits fed by the 40-amp fuse link. In this case, we track down the cause to a glove box light that was on with the door closed. The glove box latch had been bent, allowing the door to close but keeping the light on. For further information concerning ignition off draw due to the glove box light on C and Y bodies, see TSB 81490. When performing the check of ignition off draw, remember that the specific steps vary from vehicle to vehicle, so be sure to refer to the appropriate service manual. That's about it for this month's program. Join us next month for another edition of VideoTec.